Rewire. Welcome to Rewire, the podcast where trailblazers in tech share their remarkable journeys to the top. I'm June Sarpong, your host, and in this series, I'll be sitting down with the incredible founders, engineers, and executives to understand how we can rewire our mindsets to shape a brighter future for all. I want to find out about who really has your back in a crisis and the power of embracing new perspectives. Rewire. In today's episode, I am joined by the GSMA's very own Chief Marketing Officer, Lara Dewar, who's been focused on delivering value to the GSMA members and building a highly engaged community. Her career has spanned many industries, from the energy sector and telecommunications to finance and NGOs. At international charity World Vision, which is one of my favorites, may I add, she was responsible for overseeing communication strategies and reputation management for an enormous $2.5 billion enterprise. Her work at World Vision focused on advocating for global issues and driving positive change. Very much looking forward to our conversation. So, Lara, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you here. Now, as I mentioned in my introduction, you've moved between quite a few sectors and range of industries, each with their own set of priorities and challenges. How do you think this broad range of sectors and almost a sort of a need for different sets of your abilities, how do you think that has shaped the way you think and the way you lead?
It's so interesting. I think that maybe as a marketer, I have very transferable skills. I will also tell you that one of the things I love is fixing messes. And so if something's broken or if someone's made a mess of something, I'm very motivated to go in and try to fix that. But there are similarities in those industries. They've all been regulated industries, for example. The trick for me has been in a career defining myself by the skills that I bring to the table as opposed to by the industry that I represent. It does take a certain amount of courage or naivete. I haven't figured out which one yet. I will say in taking on this role in the technology space, it did occur to me that I had a big hill to climb as far as learning the language, learning the topics, getting deep enough level of intelligence that I could speak meaningfully about what the GSMA does and what our members do. And that learning curve is massive when you change industries. And so if you don't want your confidence rocked, you have to focus on what you're bringing to the table versus the knowledge that everyone else has. I said to the CTO once, who I adore, his name is Alex Sinclair, he's been so important to me at the GSMA. I said, Alex, I'm acutely aware of the technology knowledge gap I have. And he said, you don't need to know technology. I know technology. I need you to focus on how I tell a story about it, which I thought was a beautiful way for a colleague to assure me that our skills did not need to compete, but rather we could bring this beautiful complement to each other. I mean, what a remarkable thing to say,
that.
Right?
Yeah, and actually that's what delivers results, when everybody knows the reason why they are there.
Exactly.
So let's talk about your journey, if we may, and the journey that it's been for you in terms of getting to the top. And actually getting to the top in many sectors that are quite male dominated, if we're honest, if we're looking at energy and even tech still isn't what it should and could be. Can you tell us about a time where somebody really sort of showed up for you and helped mentor and sponsor you along your way?
So it's interesting when you say male dominated, they're absolutely male dominated. I mean, I've very rarely, maybe twice in my whole life, and very young in my career, had a female boss. I've only ever reported to men. Particularly the higher you go up, the hierarchy, more and more responsibility, larger portfolios. Yeah, I've always reported to men. And I just think that's an interesting reflection I think that at least in 2 instances, I worked for men who took a real interest, who I think saw something in me that I didn't yet see. And so they became more than bosses. They were champions. They put me in places that I was maybe unprepared for, but I could rise to. And so I really appreciate when leaders have that ability to see potential in people that they don't themselves see.
It's everything, isn't it? When
everything.
somebody believes in you, even before you believe in yourself.
Absolutely.
And can you talk about, if we can go into a little bit more detail in terms of those allies and those sponsors? And obviously you've talked about what they meant for your career, but what do you think they mean for careers in general?
Well, again, I think for careers in general, having leaders who have the kind of generosity that's required to see potential is important. So these are people who can step outside themselves. They don't feel vulnerable or threatened. They have a recognition somehow that embracing and nurturing talent is going to make the whole team rise, which only ensures really everyone's success at the table. So I think they have a security in themselves, an ability to see vision and potential, and then a generosity about having the ability to see where people could come in around them and giving people opportunity. I think that's a real rarity in leadership, actually.
I'd love to touch on, you mentioned that throughout your career, most of your bosses have been men. Now you are a boss. What do you think it means in terms of having a female boss, you being that female boss? What does that mean for your team and the people that report into you?
So I think it means that we have a tremendous responsibility, actually. When there's very few of you, you have a responsibility to make sure you are creating that generosity in the atmosphere, that you're looking around you and you're espousing the values that you've appreciated and benefited from over the years. I think it also means, though, that you are under a microscope. I do think that it means women get judged in ways that men don't. I don't think I get to have a bad day. And maybe that's okay, because maybe the privilege of leadership means that none of us should get to have a bad day. We get to show up every day and put our best foot forward and treat people with respect. And I feel the responsibility of changing the workplace for everyone.
And it's so important in that, what does that look like? What does the female dynamic in a leadership position mean for the workplace? How does it become different? It can't just be another version of what we've always had.
Yeah, exactly. And I can only actually pull on my own experiences. Being a mother is a big part of who I am. It's always something I wanted. And so I think about, what is the workplace I would want to create for my son and my daughter? So I have the luxury of having one of each gender. They are absolute miracles in my life. And yeah, I feel like the responsibility is not just for the people I work with, but it's for the generation who are coming next. What's the legacy we want to leave for them? What should that workplace look like? What would be more fair, more compassionate, more compelling, more engaging? So I hope every day, I mean, you would have to check in with my team, but yeah. I would hope every day that we somehow pull a little bit of that off.
Something tells me you're pulling that off. I get the vibe. So can we talk about barriers? What are some of the biggest barriers you faced along the way in your career?
Women, at least, again, this is generationally for me. I'm a woman at a certain stage of her career. The barrier at the beginning is that you aren't thought of. You're not part of the club. You don't have access to things. I didn't get invited out to golf. You know what I mean? So you miss kind of some of that social capital that men just naturally had in the workplace. I think you get counted out when you take time out to do things like have children. I think that you get counted out because women have different responsibilities, just kind of socially.
Yeah.
And there are some social norms that still exist that create barriers if we aren't careful as women. So I think those were kind of the barriers. But what I would say is, having experienced all of those, I could always find a way through. And I think a trick in life maybe, or if you've experienced some modicum of success, it's because you don't necessarily accept those barriers. I just found ways around them.
Where did that resilience come from?
That's a good question. I'm not sure where it came from, but I will tell you I'm kind of a plan B, C, D, and E girl. I always have a way through. I remember hearing years ago, be like water. You don't have to always be like confrontational and upfront or angry. Just be water. Water's not stopped. It just moves.
Finds a way.
Yeah, it finds a way. And I think there's an element of creativity to resilience. When you have resilience, you have an ability to be super creative around finding ways to make things work. Alternates, always. And so I found myself always having an alternate plan.
I love that. Good for you. So you touched on the future of leadership. Can we go into a bit more detail about that? Obviously, you've said you want the kind of workplace that would be supportive and nurturing enough for the next generation, i.e. your son and your daughter and their generation to thrive. Can we get a bit more granular? What is that? You know, give me an example of what you'd like to see done differently for the next generation.
I always think, as a woman and someone who's a feminist, that one of the things we've done well is we got ourselves invited to the game, and we even got ourselves a job on the team. But maybe we should have changed the league a little bit more. So what I would hope is that...
You know what the kids would say to that, Lara? Mic drop.
I think we got ourselves invited to the game, so now I work really hard.
And we've been playing the same game.
I missed the soccer games. I missed dinner. Instead of creating an atmosphere where we can somehow, I'm not sure I understand balance in life or even want it, but somehow can we create environments of work that allow us to also be people and somehow bring those two worlds together in more of a blend. I think hybrid working is a great example of this. I did not enjoy the COVID years, and I don't want to be misunderstood on that. Okay. But one of the benefits that came, one of the silver linings out of COVID is this understanding that we can work between home and the office and still achieve great things, be connected, create social capital, deliver great results. That has meant a lifestyle for me that puts me in front of my children and my friends, frankly, more often. It also means that I get to do some things in a day. It just gives me some flexibility. I think those sorts of philosophies are important and only just now emerging.
Yes, and they're philosophies that we didn't believe, or at least we were led to believe, wasn't possible.
Right.
But when it was something that had to be done out of necessity, we found a way through.
Right.
And it's funny because that's one of the things that, you know, the disabled community, obviously I do a lot of work in the equity and inclusion space, and the disabled community were asking for many of these reasonable adjustments that they were told were impossible. And then once COVID hit, we all went digital and it worked, actually. Right. Yeah, so This is what you're talking about, that
100%.
It can be done.
Yeah.
Totally. So now, obviously, you're very established and you've gotten to the top. How do you keep hold of a private side to yourself and allow that to almost be sacred for you and your family and your friends, but then to also be very comfortable with the sort of public persona? Because in your world, in the tech industry and in the world that you're in, you're a name that is recognized and revered. So how do you have the balance between the two?
It's interesting, isn't it? I think you learn wisdom over time. This is the only benefit of aging that I can think of. But I think you gain some wisdom over time as you mature. And so I don't know that I've always been good at boundaries. I'm certainly better in my life at boundaries. And there are things that I'm willing to talk about and share because I think they've shaped who I am and my leadership style. So talking about my children is something I'm very willing to do because they really do shape me as a person. And I've learned so much from them that I'd almost be not giving two of the most important people or the most important people in my life credit if I didn't talk about them. But there are boundaries, things that need to be personal and private. But again, at the same time, I think one of the advantages women have in leadership is that we naturally lean to some authenticity, and we probably do share a bit more of ourselves with the people that we work with. So the balance for that is I have a couple of rules. You never ever share from an open wound, only ever from a scar. And that goes with all learning, I think, because sharing our mistakes is incredibly important in building trust. And I think the other thing is understanding.
But not while you're still in the process of it.
Sharing from an open wound looks messy, and it's unclear where you're going because you haven't got the lessons side of the pain yet.
No.
But sharing from a scar means that I've reflected, hopefully. I've got some lessons that I've learned. And in my view, any pain or lesson, especially tough ones that I've learned, the benefit of those is that I learn something new as a result. And hopefully that as I share those things, I can either save someone pain, or if someone's experiencing something similar, I can somehow assuage some of the pain for them.
Yeah, because you've come out the other side and there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think the other principle is that over time, my social circles have become smaller. So maybe we have rings of people in our lives, right? You have really good friends, confidants, or maybe you have a board of directors in your own life, but you have people who you really trust their opinion. They know you. And so they get to speak into your life in a special way. That group of people has gotten smaller for me over time. Yeah. But those friendships are quite lasting, and I rely very heavily on those people. Because when you are a leader, Michael Wilson, who was the Minister of Finance for Canada and negotiated the original NAFTA agreement, which is now being questioned, he said to me once, you need to stop hanging out with people who criticize you and don't get who you are. You need to surround yourself by people who really know you and really get your vision and encourage you in that vision. And he was right. You as a leader get put in a place where it's easy to criticize me, frankly. Really super easy, because everything I do is public. And so if you spend all day focused on the criticism that can naturally come, if you treat it all as equal, that's a dark place to live. So you have to have a core inner group, in my view, who know you and who can actually tell you the tough stuff, but who can also be the people who are encouraging you in the pursuit of your vision. And they encourage you to have one. I don't think we spend nearly enough time in our lives dreaming anymore because we're constantly bombarded by things. But I'm a very big believer in having a vision and having a dream and then pursuing it relentlessly. And unless you've got a couple of cheerleaders in your life who get that, I think I would have given up on pursuits that have been really meaningful in my life without those people.
Yes, because they've reminded you of the why.
Yes.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And that you can do it. Or that if you have a wobble, like I remember in a moment saying to a friend, I guess that dream has to die because of this. And she said, well, hold on. What if you did it this way? And that one comment changed my life. That's the effect we can have on each other.
Yeah.
And I do believe that we have trials and tribulations in life because they are meant to teach us something. But then the profound gift of them becomes when I share them with other people, they too can learn from the pain that I've already borne. Have you ever heard that expression, this too shall pass?
Yes. I love that one.
Yes. So this has been a real, this is something I repeat to myself when you're having a bad moment or a bad day. This too shall pass. Also, when you're having a great success, this too shall pass.
Yes, actually.
It's really good it's good for keeping you humble, and it's good for keeping you grounded and reminded that most things in life are temporary.
Also, the thing with that is also it means that you never get complacent.
Exactly.
And in your world, you cannot, because everything is so fast changing.
It changes so fast.
Yeah. With that in mind, can you tell me why it means so much to you to change the GSMA for the better? Because obviously it's already doing great things, but even more so. And the tech world at large, because this is an area that you're really focused on.
I think great organizations are never complacent. Resting on your laurels, we've got too many examples of big, iconic organizations that simply, from my own childhood, don't exist anymore because they couldn't or didn't adapt. And my association is no different than that. Mobile technology has changed a lot over the course of many generations of technology. And its place now, to your point, you know, if I think about the first time I had a mobile phone, I had a brand new car. I had a mobile phone installed in my car.
Oh, look at you.
Because I was taking a road trip to the East Coast. This is a big deal. And I needed it for safety, but I couldn't afford to use it because it was so expensive to use it.
Remember, yeah.
Now that same technology, to your point earlier, created an environment where when the whole world had to shut down, it could keep us all connected. It could keep stock markets running and our banks running, our jobs working. We could stay in touch with our friends. And so this is a technology that has matured quickly. It's been adapted quickly. So there are almost 7 billion unique connections in the world that the GSMA gets to represent. And we need to stay relevant in that frame. And there's always something new coming down the line that will now rely on that mobile technology.
Yes.
So it's everywhere. I think one of the greatest benefits of the GSMA that is that it is a truly global organization in an increasingly fragmented world. This is incredibly important. One of the reasons we hold tight to that value is that keeping the technology harmonized means that when you and I travel, you know, I'll go home to Canada this summer to see family. I don't have to change phones.
No.
And that's at a very basic level. So as new technologies come down the pipe, and this is an enabling technology of those things, then the organization staying relevant by increasing its community to expand it out to some of the verticals that rely on us is important, but staying close to and true to our roots is also important.
Yeah. So obviously you've done a lot of work in the DEI space. And now, I mean, you and I spoke about this off camera when we were at the Mobile World Congress. There's obviously the pushback. What pressure do you feel in terms of retreating? And then how do you get the confidence and the courage not to retreat when there is so much external pressure to stop this work?
Isn't this external pressure extraordinary?
It's extraordinary.
I wonder how we got here. So we do feel pressure because we're a global organization. You know, there are pockets from all over the world where sentiment is changing whether we like it or not. I think I get to work with a team of people of high integrity. And the data on DEI, very undeniable.
Undeniable.
Or McKinsey and the smart folks at various consulting firms who have come up with the data are wrong. I mean, that would be extraordinary, wouldn't it?
But it's funny how they've all come up with the same data.
Yes, exactly.
I've got some here for you. 36% more profitable.
Yes.
And those in the bottom quartiles, those that have ethnic and cultural diversity. And then we know what the figures are for those that have gender diversity.
Right.
I mean,
we get better performing boards. We get more innovative ideas emerge.
Yep.
We get better performing stock market results. And I don't know about you, but I would also say just from a work experience perspective, I have to tell you, things are better when we see more diversity at the table. And so why do we stick to our guns? Because the evidence is so clear.
Yeah.
And because we also now live in a world where AI is the latest and most dominant theme and technology on the planet. It's going to solve some big challenges the world has. When you look at things like burgeoning healthcare systems, there is very likely, and we're seeing now use cases and technologies coming alongside healthcare systems that where AI can help in patient care, in diagnosis, can see huge opportunities there. The challenge with AI is that if we're not careful, we teach it the same biases that exist in society. So if the only people ever programming it, teaching it, writing the information that it's going out and learning are men or white men, then we're only going to learn those
and it's
perspectives.
Elite white men. It's not just white men. It's a particular small group.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we've got to be creating a world where all of us have a hand in teaching it, particularly as the tool becomes smarter and moves out of large language models, which is massively difficult to understand in and of itself. We've just got to make sure that the inputs are diverse. Otherwise, we take the bias world that I've grown up in, the only ever reporting to men, and we replicate that in the technology. And that would be such a shame. It would be such a waste of a tool that is emerging and becoming as dynamic as it is, with the potential to solve big challenges if we only taught it a particular perspective.
And also, to that point, we know that the tool, the speed at which that tool learns is beyond human comprehension. So my goodness, if we're teaching it the wrong things, can you imagine what it can do with that?
Right.
Whereas if the reverse is true and we're teaching it the right things, it teaches us to be better.
Right.
Yeah.
And all the nuances. You know yourself, you've traveled some, I've traveled some. You can approach what looks like, on the surface, you see an issue in a country. But once you get underneath it, once you talk to the people in the country, what emerges is this thinking around, now I understand the context of it. And so the answer that I thought before that was maybe simple and straightforward, I can see why that is completely not relevant. And I have to ask these questions to figure out an alternate. So we need to make sure it has all of
the
that
information.
Context
Yeah.
and the information. Yeah.
Well, I've got a clip I'd love you to listen to and get your thoughts on. Here's business leader Amanda Blanc talking about her experience in the workplace in relation to DEI.
I had just finished my speech and I sat down and somebody stood up. It was an elderly gentleman, and he stood up and he said, "It's great to see so many women on the board, because they're so good at housekeeping." And that set the tone effectively for the meeting. And then another shareholder basically said that I wasn't the man for the job. And then there was a follow-up by another shareholder about, needing to wear the trousers. And they compared me to a previous CEO and said, that I should wear trousers. And I was just about to get on a plane to go to Canada. And as I was sort of 35,000 feet in the air, I thought, actually, do you know what? This is not acceptable. I'm not happy about this at all. And I thought, how am I going to deal with it? And I thought, I'm going to write a LinkedIn article. I wrote that, that for too long I had sat back and not said anything, but it's time to step up. It's time to talk, and it's time for this stuff to stop.
What are your thoughts? How do you respond to that?
I just wonder how many war stories we all have. I think we have wonderful moments at MWC where we pull together 2 round tables of predominantly women to talk about matters related to DEI. And I have to tell you, people are tired. You hear in her voice, she's tired of this.
Enough.
It's 2025.
It's like, come on.
And in the last couple of years, I've had experiences where I wish I could tell you that those comments are no longer commonplace, but they are commonplace. And so I think that...
How do you respond when you experience that sort of overt disrespect, even if it's not intentional? Because sometimes a lot of this stuff is sort of said in jest, isn't it? How do you respond in the moment?
It's funny, isn't it, what's said in jest that's not funny at all?
Yeah.
I suppose...
that.
Yes, exactly. I laugh a lot less than I used to, and I reply less patiently than I used to. And it goes back to what I said earlier, which is I have a responsibility to make it better now for the next generation. There was a moment in my life where you go along with things, and maybe you laugh off a joke that's not that funny because you're making your way up and you're paying your dues, and you're doing that in all sorts of ways. And we don't have to like that or not, but that is true. You pay your dues before you learn and get experience and cut your teeth and earn the next promotion. But there is a point then when we all have a responsibility to look at someone and say, you know, that's really not funny, or it's not appropriate, or I'd prefer you did it this way. So in my own life, I still try to treat people with dignity. I'm a great believer that I need to respond according to my own character and values and not react according to what is someone else's. So responding with some sort of dignity, but making clear what my values are. It is amazing in rooms like when you do that, how people rise to expectation. So if my expectation is that we behave like ladies and gentlemen, however we define that, people do rise to it if you put it out there in the atmosphere. But I also think, by the way, that I have a responsibility to be an ally for others. So whether it's directed, those comments or that behavior, that attitude is directed at me or not, I have a responsibility to step in. So I'm probably better now at standing up for myself, but I'm really good at when it's directed at someone else, stepping in and making it very clear what will be acceptable. You know, it's very easy to sit and watch someone be on the receiving end of something that is making everyone uncomfortable and say nothing. And we had this remarkable session with John Amici. He just had this way of explaining kind of through case studies and examples. And it made me really think about the moments when I had A, not stuck up for myself, and B, when I had maybe not stuck up for someone else when it was directed elsewhere. And what a responsibility I have as a human being, really, to do and behave differently.
So what does having a diverse team mean to you?
For me, it means that the teams that we create at the GSMA look like the board and the members that we have. And team extends out to the programs that we build. So this year at MWC, our first 2 series of keynotes reflected the global dynamic of mobile operators for the first time. And I think that's really important. So it has to extend beyond kind of our immediate microcosm. It has to extend out into the work we're doing. So what I do as a marketer is there's lots of creative work. If the creative work we produce doesn't reflect diversity, then we have a problem at our core. So that's taking it beyond kind of that tokenism, if you like, to, does the output reflect that we're diverse? And I'm really proud that the GSMA has systems and technology in place that helps us ensure that where a bias is detected, that we can redirect. Our head of people and culture is very, very intentional in that way. And then again, we've got leaders in place, hopefully like myself, that are also making sure our outputs reflect it.
So you've talked about being comfortable and curious. I'd like you to explain to me what that means to you, and actually, is it possible to be both?
Curiosity is important to me because I think too often, or at least what I've learned, is that knowing how to ask or what next question to ask is the key to unlocking almost everything in life. It also keeps you out of defensiveness as a communicator, which is incredibly important, I think, especially, again, at a time when the world is very, very fragmented. I think curiosity means, and it reflects diversity to the degree that if I'm always seeking knowledge, if I'm always curious about how we got here, why someone thinks that, what else could we contemplate, you end up having the most beautiful conversations with people, first of all.
Takes you out of judgment as well.
Takes you out of judgment. Yeah. Lifelong learner. It also means that you're holding less to your ideals, so you're less about dogma and more about exploration, which I think is, for me, it's become an incredibly important principle. I think comfort is an interesting thing to contemplate. I try to keep myself at a certain level of discomfort in my career all the time, mostly because I associate comfort with complacency. And so I set for myself big goals, that scare me. I know as soon as I'm a little bit afraid about something, it's probably the right goal on a work basis. But maybe as a result of spending most of my time in that place, I then crave comfort in other places.
At home, okay,
right.
I get
right.
it. Yeah.
You have to know the limits of what you can take and what you can do, right? But there's comfort's important, but being uncomfortable and leaning into uncomfortable. Again, successful people lean into uncomfortable conversations. And the way to lean into that discomfort is curiosity,
I agree.
in my view.
Yeah, the comfort is what gives you the fuel for the curiosity.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I was with World Vision, you mentioned appreciating and admiring their work. One of the most remarkable things I got to do in that role was travel to some very uncomfortable and oftentimes dangerous places. And what I learned was many, many things I learned, but I learned how the same we are around the world, our goals and desires, and how different our contexts were, which was completely random. But people, mothers around the world want the same thing that I want. They don't want different things. So
they want life to be better for their babies. Yeah.
But being exposed to that, I needed a comfortable place to retreat, to process and reflect and learn, and then go out and do something with the stories that people had trusted me with, in the hopes of pursuing, in my role, predominantly funding for the work that was needed. So, comfort and discomfort in some sort of weird... I keep saying the word balance, but it's not what I mean. I need a different word.
Yeah, I know
there's a yin-yang to it.
Equilibrium.
There's an equilibrium.
Yeah. Which
Keeps
is what we
you
all
spinning
want.
on the right axis, but you're never in equal or perfect balance.
Yeah, and never complacent.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about paying it forward. What does it mean for you, and how do you encourage others to do the same?
One of the values that I hold, I hope, and that I demonstrate to others is generosity. I have I hold that in really high regard. I love it in other people. I hope that myself and my children behave in a way consistent with that. And so paying it forward means, first of all, sometimes extending trust and opportunity to people who haven't yet earned it. It can be that simple. It can be paying it forward, can be ensuring that we are living in our community in a way that we hope creates a situation where all boats rise. Paying it forward career-wise means finding young men and women who need a leg up and figuring out how I can help them. So it can be about networking. And I think paying it forward is, especially career-wise, super important right now. With the advent of AI and how young people are now applying for jobs in a way that's like throwing your CV into a dark hole, figuring out how to get through the algorithms, fewer and fewer internships. I think there's a real way that we need to pay it forward career-wise and make sure that to the degree we can, that we're seeking out people to help.
If you were able to change the world of mobile and tech, in particular for women, what would it be and what would you do?
So I recently met some women who operate in the space of education, and it's interesting sitting here talking to you as a quote-unquote tech leader, because I don't feel like a tech leader. I'm a marketer with some highly transferable skills. That's why I can cross industries the way I have.
Yes.
And I always think of technology people as, the super smart people, the people who with maths degrees and computer science degrees, the scientists, the Ada Lovelaces of the world. So I think what I would do is instead of focusing on the mobile industry, I would focus on education and say, how do we take some of the bias out of education so that more people feel smart and we don't count girls out of maths and sciences quite in the way that we have historically? And how do we attract young people to the mobile industry by making it by addressing the stereotypes?
Yeah.
I talked to a woman recently who is a data scientist herself. She runs a very cool organization. And she said that young children have this stereotype in their head of people in the technology space, like they're kind of middle-aged men who work in a basement. They have multiple screens and they just hammer away on keyboards all day. But how do we change that stereotype? And again, this whole idea of education is how could we create a more holistic kind of view to education where we recognize the gifts and talents of people in a maybe more holistic way?
Lara Dewar, Dewar by name, Dewar by nature.
I would like to think so. Thank you.
It has been an absolute pleasure. And I have to
you.
say the GSMA are so lucky to have a leader like you, at the top of the organization and working with your fellow leaders to make this organization as future-proof as possible. So thank you. I've so enjoyed the conversation.
Yes, so have I. Thank you, June. Thank you
And
for what you're
the
doing.
Rewire podcast.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Rewire. That's it for this episode of Rewire. Huge thanks to Lara Dewar for joining me, and of course to you for listening. Please rate and review and subscribe to Rewire wherever you get your podcasts. Rewire.